Meeting to order at 7:10 on August 14th, 2019. We can do a quick roll call.
Greg LaFine.
John Devereaux.
Rick Riley.
Laura Gandia.
Mark Filato.
I'd like to appoint Greg and Mark to the board as members this evening. They're alternates. They'll be filling in for the members who are absent tonight. So we do have a full quorum. Before I get started, I just want to do a quick review of the agenda. We had 5 items on the agenda for this evening. Case number 2019-04. The applicant is Denise Bernard, Van Connect Inc. Location of property is 271 Dairy Road in Litchfield, map 2, lot 47. I have received notice from them that they would like to continue this case until September. So
You can make a motion to continue that case until September 11th.
I have a motion from Laura to continue case 2019-04 to September 11th. Do I have a second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
So that case is going to be continued. Now, we do have another item on the agenda for this evening. That was case number 2019-10. This is the name of the applicant is Jill Charbonneau. Revocable trust. I may not have that correct. I know she's a trustee. The owner of the property is Mel's Funway Park LLC. Location of the property is 454 Charles Bancroft Highway, Litchfield, New Hampshire, map 20, lots 14, 15, 16, and 17 at least. That's what's listed on the application. Now, this is on the agenda to be heard tonight. That being said, I must apologize. There is an error in the public notices that was just brought to my attention this evening. Notices went out to the abutters indicating that case would be heard on September 11th. However, the public notice that was posted in the newspaper, the Hudson Litchfield News, indicated that the case would be heard this evening. It was our intention to hear that case this evening. However, we cannot proceed based on the fact that the incorrect notices for that case were sent to all of the abutters with the September 11th date. Therefore, I'm going to require that we push this meeting out till September 11th, take the action item to issue new public notices on this, both to the abutters and to the Hudson Litchfield News, and get that on the agenda for September 11th instead of tonight. So if folks are here to hear that case or to speak in that case, I apologize sincerely for the mistake, but we won't be getting into any of the details on that case this evening.
Do you want me to make a motion to that effect?
So that being said, I'll take a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to continue case number 2019-10 to September 11th due to the lack of proper notice to abutters.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Greg. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So that motion carries 5-0. Again, if any of you are here for the appeal of decision for 2019-10 involving the applicant Jill Charbonneau over revocable trust, that is being pushed out till September 11th. You don't need to stay for that case tonight because we won't be getting into any details on that one. Okay, looks like everybody's staying. Now, next on the agenda, or first up on the agenda in terms of cases I have, is 2019-05A. This is an extension of case 2019-05, which was heard last month. There were a number of decisions made in that particular case involving a gas station. The name of the applicant is Thoreau Properties LLC, also the owner of the property. Location of the property is 522 Charles Bancroft Highway, Litchfield, New Hampshire, 03052, map 22, lot 11. In this particular case, for tonight, the applicant is seeking a variance from Article 1250, Section 1254.00B of the zoning ordinance to permit subsurface transmission of gasoline through pipeline from above-ground storage to above-ground pumps in the Aquifer Protection District.
I may have to recuse myself.
Okay? So Laura is recusing?
Yes.
Recusing herself from this particular case. So I have 4 members that are going to sit on this case. If that's okay with you guys, we're going to proceed with 4. Otherwise, you have the right to continue this to.
That's fine.
Okay,
Continue.
so let the record show that the applicant has decided to move forward with a 4-member board this evening. Okay. If you'd like to proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. My name is Morgan Hollis. I'm an attorney in Nashua at Gottesman and Hollis, 39 East Pearl Street in Nashua. And I am here this evening representing the applicant for the variance as read by the chair. Excuse me. Thoreau Properties LLC is the applicant, and also I represent the owner, Thoreau Development. And with me this evening is the manager of the limited liability company, Renee Thoreau. The property is located at 522 Charles Bancroft Highway, map 22, lot 11. It is located in the Northern Commercial District and the Aquifer Protection District. You may recall, as the chair indicated, that the last meeting in July, on July 10th, the ZBA approved a special exception to allow a gas station with above-ground tanks. But at that time, we realized that there was going to be an underground pipe connecting the above-ground tank to the above-ground pump. And that underground pipe carrying the gasoline is not permitted in the Aquifer Protection District. So we applied for a variance from Article 1254B to permit the subsurface transmission of gasoline through a pipeline. Simply put, it goes from the tank under the ground, under the driveway and parking area, and then up into the dispenser and the above-ground pump. At this time, I think it would be helpful to the board if I introduce Mike Redding, who is going to discuss and describe the nature of the pipe, the features involved in the pipe, what happens when and if there ever is a leak or some other defect that might cause a leak. And I think that's background so I can make the arguments on the 5 criteria. Mike?
Can I just confirm that I've got the access to the TV? There should be a source button that you would need to press. And then you would have to look for PC in. See where it says PC in? You just scroll down to that. Keep hitting the source button and it should scroll for you. Come on. You had it once. There you go. There it is. Yep. And hit enter if it's possible.
I think you actually want HDMI 1.
Oh, okay. Thank you. All right. Great. Thank you.
Can you speak up so anybody?
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you. Again, my name is Michael Redding with Lorero Engineering. Our offices are at 779 South Main Street in Manchester, New Hampshire. What I'd like to do is provide for you some of the information about the proposed underground piping system. When we last met, one of the things that I had shared with you was about the reliance on technology when we're looking at underground tanks and why we chose to go with the above ground tanks. Here we're looking at underground piping, and what I wanted to demonstrate to you was the due diligence that we did to ensure that we're providing all the assurances that are needed for the protection of the environment and the sensitivity of this zone. So what we're proposing to do is install the OPW FlexWorks piping system. If you've ever been to a gas station and you've reached in for that dispenser, you'll see the letters OPW. These are the world-leading, folks in petroleum distribution for retail gasoline. They have, numerous years of just experience and research to provide the expertise to be able to develop a system that will address, I think, the current concerns that that we're here to overcome with regards to the aquifer protection and sensitivities of that district. So let me dive a little bit into it. The fully integrated double-walled primary pipe is also encased with a third outer shell system. So essentially, what is essentially double-walled is really triple-walled. The primary delivery piping system is going to be rated for both suction as well as pressure, and that it will be a semi-rigid double-wall pipe that's constructed with it fitting loosely into that outside chamber or that outside piping, that third barrier. And it's really important that that loosely fitting configuration exists. And I'm going to get into a little bit more later, but it's also somewhat of a kind of a proprietary system with this FlexWorks. The loose fit allows for the detection and the containment of leaks. And that was something that we wanted to recognize right away, is that this kind of triple barrier system will then be also monitored routinely and constantly with these devices to be able to capture any sort of leaks. We feel that this piping system is so robust that we hope that those detectors never get used, and we feel confident that that will be such the case. So by having this triple wall, this third outer shell, it also allows them to access that pipe if there is ever a need, and it allows them to do it very conveniently. And I'm going to explain why that's really important. But what I did is I brought actual pipe and the whole system to some degree, samples, so you could see what I'm trying to talk about. So I'm going to hand some of this out so that you can at least get a kind of a touch and feel for it. Here.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what's carrying the gasoline from the above ground storage tanks underground to the above ground fuel pumps.
So that's your primary carrier that's double walled. So if you look at it very closely, you'll see there's a white interior. That's your primary carrier. Then the exterior is the double. And if you look between the two, you'll see these small little holes. That's going to be your basically your containment a portion of the pipe that then will go back to the detectors so that your primary pipe can be detected if there's ever any leaks. This outer pipe is that triple barrier. So if the primary and then the double wall pipe for some reason fails, then it will be captured in this piping, which serves two purposes. One is to capture that leak, but two, it's to protect the primary pipe. As you can see, it's corrugated. So it's rated for any heavy loading, heavy truck loading, plus any pressures that might be experienced in the subsurface once it's buried, both during construction and then final placement. Because so you have stresses both during construction and after, kind of in the first 20 days after its placement. The soils are settling, you get kind of irregular settlement, which can create pinches in pipe. This pipe is going to bridge that and prevent any impact. If you look at that coupling there, there's some really unique properties to it. And I'm going to go into some detail, and I'd like to show you a video about why that's unique. So you can see it's certainly robust, real meaty, and it has the ability to connect as a slip-on to the existing pipe, which is going to create a really great advantage to preventing these kind of points of failure that OPW has recognized through its history. So I guess it's important to recognize that all of the pipes and fittings will be designed for direct burial, even though the primary pipe will be supported by a secondary pipe. All the pipe runs are going to be jointless, which is a critical thing and something that has been, relatively new. I wouldn't say it's older than 5 years, but the idea and the concept in some of the older gas stations is where you have sticks of pipe and then you're connecting them in the field. And that's what we're going to avoid by having one continuous length. I talked about the fittings. So if you can grab that fitting there, and if you look, there's a hole in it, right? And what that does is that allows for a true double wall connection to the fitting. So the piping is double wall, but now also the fitting is double wall. So that little threaded hole will allow for a tube to connect to another system to be able to monitor it. So where lots of times the piping is doubled wall and then you have to break the piping to be able to test it, this is integrated right into the fitting and it's all threaded so it becomes one seamless connection. The piping will be resistant to both natural and chemical elements. So once it's in the ground, if there are any sort of issues, whether it be just moisture, whether it just be the acidity of the soil, or it be the metals that are in the natural occurring in the soil, all of this piping will be resistant to that, and certainly any sort of bacterial impacts. All of the pipe fittings and penetration fittings will be certified to meet the Underwriter Laboratories UL 971 standard, which is a fairly robust standard, and it's specifically designed for non-metallic piping and underground piping for flammable liquids. So all of that is going to be met. As I mentioned before, the FlexWork is a fully integrated underground system, and it provides kind of an end-to-end containment. And so that allows for complete testing and monitoring because of that continuity. And it'll be totally accessible basically all the time. The one thing that's really unique about this system is the fact that when OPW put it together, they recognized that there were failures that they saw that were out of their control and basically was giving their product a black eye. And what they wanted to do was engineer those out of the system. So could they get it from the factory? So where they're touting that this product is, essentially it's leak proof. But when it leaves the factory, the vulnerability becomes when it's in the field and the contractor's installing it. So no different if you could think about where you've got a plumber in your home and, if it's, your brother-in-law and he doesn't do plumbing really well, those joints need to be tight, right? And they're good enough. They're not good enough for us. And so and that was what OPW was seeing, is that contractors varied and they tried a certification process and that helped, but ultimately didn't remove 99%, right? You never get to 100, but they're looking to get to 99% of that fail-proof. What they did is they engineered a system to remove the point of failures that had to do with connections and fittings, that had to do with installation errors, and that also came about as a result of maintenance and or repair damage. So I'll get into a little bit about that. I want to share with you a quick video that kind of just summarizes all of this. And now this video comes from OPW, so it's self-serving. So that's the disclaimer, and it also has an underground tank. But I think what was really powerful to me and why I believe in this product is when you can see it constructed, you'll see what I'm talking about, how that seamless end-to-end system really can provide that risk prevention or risk management.
While you're bringing that up, let me ask you a question.
And I apologize
Is
for
there
the music.
are there other piping systems on the market that could have been used, and what you're showing us is something that is this best practice today or above and beyond what's considered best practice today?
Yeah, it's best available technology, right?
This
So it's
is.
above and beyond.
So there's other technologies available, but in your opinion, they're not that continuous one pipe all the way through. They don't have the same bells and whistles, if you will, for containment, monitoring, and reporting on deficiencies that this particular system has.
That's correct. And I have a second video that shows like a side-by-side comparison
Good,
to
thanks.
kind of give you some of that perspective.
Yep,
So
good.
So again, I apologize for, I can actually mute the music so you don't have to listen to the drama of it. It's like a rock video, but I'll try to narrate it as we move along. So there's lots of testimonials from contractors that talk about how quickly they can install it and why that is. But really, what it's doing is it's eliminating those points of failure that is introduced during construction. So here's just kind of a rendering of how it works. So there you have the underground piping. In this case, ours is above ground, but the connection will be roughly the same. Where you have
Your
this
tanks are above ground. You mean your piping will be below
Well,
ground?
correct. Yes,
Yeah.
thank you. So same idea. There will be all the control valves that we talked about in our last meeting, so that the overflow protection of the pipe is ensured, of the tank is ensured. And then as it leaves the tank, again, this is all one continuous pipe length that connects through that triple barrier system and then goes up inside a plastic container that sits below the dispenser, which is sealed. And you can see how that is. And then that coupling comes up through and connects with the dispenser itself. The dispenser itself has all these different connections that allow for breakaway conditions that then, if there's any sort of leaks, get trapped in that plastic container beneath the dispenser. Access to the tanks and or the pumping is very easy with the ports that they provide. They integrate with the system. And obviously it meets the 40 CFR compliance, which is a EPA standard. And that's that. So like I said, I have one other video that I'll share with you in a little bit.
What is done to prevent the accidental digging up of a pipe like this? Like in my old communications days, you put tracer wires in these things, so DigSafe can always locate it. I mean, is it similar? If they were ever digging up that parking lot for whatever reason, how do they know where those pipes are?
Right. So the way that they do is they put a tracer line in.
They do.
Yeah.
All right.
And so you would be able to then, on top of that thicker outer line, they'll put a tracer line that then they can put a small voltage into it, and
Yep.
then you'll be able to spot it exactly. But that's the beauty of this system, is that they found that when there were repairs that needed to be made, right? So with the older piping and the sweating and the fittings and that sort of thing, they would have a leak. And then they'd have to go get that one line that was leaking, which involved digging up the concrete. And in that process, they're creating pressures to the other system that they don't know. And so then that creates a potential leak and a point of failure. And then there's something else down the line. With this integrated system, it's almost like electric conduit, where you've got a carrier outside shell and one continuous piping system, so that if they did for whatever reason need to replace it, it's just unscrew it on one side and pull it through, pull the other one in, and there's no digging. So it really prevents that kind of incidental consequences of going after that failed condition or repairing condition that could impact other areas of the site.
When they encounter a spill, a leak, minor, major, whatever, is there required reporting involved there? Do they have to report to some agency or anything, or do they just clean up the mess and that's that?
So they're required to monitor all of these ports, and they're supposed to provide reporting back to the state for
the
those
state?
reports. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
EPA?
DES.
Yes.
Yep. So DES has its own program for underground and above ground storage tanks and basically for fuel dispensing. And so you can go onto their website, and there's 2 or 3 folks in that department that dedicate every day to both educating, inspecting, and enforcing the rules. And more recently than not, they've been very proactive about some of the older systems where they've found issues, where there's gaps, where there's with the ethanol that's in the gas, it's eating away at O-rings and things like that. And so they're getting that information out, and they're also getting out of their seat to inspect these to make sure that folks are compliant. So more so than ever, gasoline stations are on the watch, and a system like this is going to make it
The
easier.
active monitoring, is that just by the gas stations, or does that tie into, say, local fire, so that they know that there's a leak detected and they are already rolling or responding?
So if you have a leak, you are required to report it to the state. And in that process, it could activate a call to the fire department. So typically it's 25 gallons or less. If you feel that you have it containerized, it's not been released out of the secondary containment, and that you can properly manage it in a 24-hour period, then you would simply notify the state that happened and that it's taken care of. Usually they ask you just to either write them a little note, or in some cases, if it's more than the first time, they'll probably swing by and check.
So do the stations train their employees to deal with those kind of situations? I mean, some of the employees I've seen at these places, I'm not sure they would know how to deal with something like that.
Yeah, typically it's just a monitor and report is how they train them. And then they'll either have a professional service company, which, no different than if you've got a spill on the highway.
On call.
They're ready to come, and like a hazmat team, they're ready to take care of that.
Interesting. Thank you.
Great.
Few questions I had. Sorry.
Yeah, sure. So the heart of this system really prides itself on the materials. And if you feel that piping, you probably asked yourself, like, what is that, right? And so is it PVC, or is it an HDPE? Well, it's a PVDF, and the common or the proprietary name is Kynar. And so it's an engineered thermoplastic, and it comes from that polyvinyl, that PVC family, but the chloride is gone, right? And so what they've done is they've used other more robust, more flexible as well as stronger materials to be able to create that indestructible, impermeable surface, but also offer some flexibility to it. So that's what you've got there. The Kynar is been in production for something like 50 years as far as a material goes, and it's been mostly used in like the high chemical factory manufacturing, where you've got really harsh environments due to acidity and just the heats and the changes in temperature. So it's got a track record that's well proven. OPW on their website, use words like impenetrable, impervious, invulnerable, indestructible. So they for themselves are setting a standard that is extremely high that many of their competitors can't meet. The one thing that, going back to what I was saying before about how OPW has learned and always is growing to try to provide the best product, and how they've been trying to remove those points of failure, is they recognize that sweating of the fitting was one of them. And so in the traditional system where you've got sticks of pipe that are 20 feet long, the contractor then has to connect them. One of the methods when they came out with the HDPE pipe was to do fusion connections. So essentially you have a machine that kind of lays the faces of them and then puts a hot plate in between, brings them in, pulls the hot plate away, and then quickly smashes them together. And if you get the right side bead, then you've made the connection. And then there's a testing process. But what they found was, it's Friday afternoon, it's on the summertime, and people are looking, so there's that point of failure that they couldn't control. So they invented the one continuous semi-ridge pipe so that it can be snaked through the lot and from the tank to the dispenser. The other thing that they did was that they figured out a way to create near factory conditions in the field when you're taking that coupler and you're putting it onto the end. And what they've done is they've got this device that ships with the equipment, with the product. And then they have someone that goes out into the field to train the contractor on how to actually run this device. And essentially it's kind of a set it and forget it. You put the pipe in, you put the coupler in, you press the button, the machine joins the two, it beeps, you pull it out, and it's ready to connect. And they've done so many trials to prove that the machine works, that essentially once it's been connected, it's essentially factory or OPW certified for that connection. I've got the video to show you a little bit about that, and then I'll point that out when it comes along. But the video is a side-by-side comparison of kind of a lesser product, more kind of stick pipe and connections, and how they're kind of saying how long it takes compared to the one to the other. And at some point you'll see where they take the fitting and the pipe and they make this black box. It's kind of like a barrel, and they connect the two. So let me play for that for you now. So the left side is the flex work that we're proposing, and the right side is kind of a comparable lesser product. You can see they both have a sump system. One requires a lot of manual connections, drilling. operator controlled, installer controlled. Here, these guys already have the sump set and moving on to piping installation. They make 2 cuts, one at the tank, one at the dispenser. This is your outside carrier, triple wall barrier. Again, 2 cuts. Guys on the right are still putting in the gaskets for the connection to the sump. There's the connector right there for the coupling. You can see how it goes in. They press the button, turn it off, and it's connected.
How long has this system been in use, you said? Number of years, right? 5
Yeah, a
years?
number of years. I think it's close to 5 at this
5?
point. Yep.
Okay.
So 6 dispensers, 8 hours. They can roughly do a whole gas station in a day. And the guys on the other side are still futzing around with the 1. Where it's 2 to 3 on the other side. So
Neat stuff. I think for me, the most important thing to establish, again, I apologize, this could be a family thing. I'm going to step out and take this if I can. Can you run this for just a couple minutes? I'm just going to take this real quick. I'll be right back.
so I can continue.
Yes,
Mike?
please.
Sure. Okay, great. So I wanted just to talk a little bit about that outside the larger pipe. So, we talked about the different points of failure and how we wanted to try to make it leak proof. This is the 3rd line of defense. So in addition to the carrier pipe being double walled and also having detectors on it to sense if there's a leak of that primary pipe, this pipe itself will also have a sump that will have a monitor in it, will detect any sort of leaks. So for some reason that secondary containment monitor fails, there's a backup to the backup. The pipe is 4 inches in diameter, which gives it lots of flexibility for the different sizes. I believe we've got 1.25 inches or something there, but the idea is that there's plenty of room to work that pipe through and not creating sort of stress or pressure on the pipe. Allows for full access for inspection as well as for replacement. And it's designed to take that heavy load of the trucks both during construction as well as after. So, when the site is first constructed, the soils are still settling, even though you've got the concrete system on top. All of that is still putting some extra pressure on these piping system. That pipe is going to prevent any sort of irregular stresses that would otherwise impact or put strain on the primary carrier. The other thing I want to mention is there's going to be a testing program that will happen. So when construction, so once they have all that laid out, and you can see all the pipe will be on the ground and visible, all the connections will be verified. They're then going to do testing, pressure testing of all 3 pipes. And so they're going to do, pressure testing of the primary, pressure testing of the secondary, and then this outer carrier pipe. It'll be a simple pressure test where they plug both ends, put air in it, monitor it for a certain time period to see if there's a drop in air pressure. If there's no drop, the pipe is competent. If there's a drop, they'll replace the pipe. That will be done by a independent party to verify it. Then it will be backfilled. So again, there's another opportunity, right, to create problems. But we're going to be testing it even after it's backfilled to ensure that there has been no issues. And again, that will be another third-party testing. There will be a little bit more independent and a little bit more involved. I think there's a longer duration of it, and the machines that they do, they measure a much smaller increment with regards to pressure drop. That will come with a tightness certification, which can then be shared with the town if so. Your pleasure. And ultimately verifying for the property owner that the system is installed correctly.
What did you mean by backfill?
When they cover the pipe with
okay.
soil
I got you.
before they then would cover the whole site with the concrete pads. Yeah. Because you want to compact that, you want to get that firm. So
Is it really only 3 pipes? They have diesel here, right? Is it leaded, unleaded?
Right. Typically, you'll have 3 tanks. So you'll have the super and the regular, and then you blend the 2 to get your middle. That's how you make
What
the middle.
about diesel?
And diesel will have its own tank. Yep.
So it's 4 pipes total.
So depending on the dispensers and what they're offering, right? So you'll have.
Oh, 3 pipes to every pump. Oh, yeah. That's a lot of pipes. That's right, too. Okay. Now I get
What's
you.
the life of these pipes?
Oh wow, we're talking 50-year lifetime. I mean plastics, and you can see how robust they are, and then you add in this fortified PVDF, what am I always get it wrong. It's Kynar product. Yeah, you're looking at a 50-year guaranteed manufacturing life. But I mean it's.
And how about the detectors that are going to be in?
Yeah, those are 10-year lives, and they're constantly needing to be inspected, maintained, and replaced on that interval.
So with this plastic now, the area is all sensitive to PFOAs and all that stuff. That's not going to contribute to anything.
It's not. No, right. It's a non-leachable product. It's been cured, and so anything that's been used in its in its development is essentially embedded into the materials. So it's very very similar to the.
That's a good technical rundown on the pipe.
Okay, great.
Any questions on that stuff? We can always get to them. You want to start addressing the criteria?
Yes, if I could. So, as I said, on July 10th, the ZBA approved a special exception to allow the gas station with above-ground tanks and above-ground dispensers. And this is the last leg. Under the Aquifer Protection District, we're not allowed to put an underground pipe unless we obtain a variance from the regulations. So we are asking for that variance, and I have to prove the 5 criteria. The first criteria is that granting the variance will not be contrary to the public interest. The pipes themselves will not be seen. They're going to be underground. So there really isn't any change to the aesthetics or to the appearance, or for that matter, to the character of the neighborhood, because the pipes are all underground. If in fact the pipes could not go underground, they were forced above ground, the pipes could be seen. That might alter the character, and that you're going to have a pipe coming from the tank, going up high, overhead, coming down to the dispenser.
It'd be the same pipes, all right?
It might not be the same pipes. It
You
might
don't
be
know.
a different pipe because it's not the same kind of concerns.
Okay.
You can have whatever pipe you want. You might have fitted joints because you've got a lot of different connections
exactly.
going on, and you might have a different structure. There might be a superstructure required in order to accommodate the pipes. So that indeed might change the character of the neighborhood with all those pipings go over it. This will not change the character of the neighborhood because it won't be seen, essentially. Also, having them underground, granting the variance will not pose a threat to the public health, safety, or welfare due to what's been explained this evening. And I would say if you're inclined to grant the variance, you would make a stipulation or a condition of approval that it must use the OPW system as presented. That way you're sure you're getting what has been represented to you by the applicant. So stipulation is using the OPW system as presented. Again, using that system, I think, is adequately demonstrated that there will be no threat to the public health, safety, or welfare. All the protections are built in. And then there's also these notices, notification systems, should there be a leak that somehow develops. Number 2, granting the variance is preserving the spirit of the ordinance. Well, clearly the spirit of this ordinance is to protect the aquifer from damage, which might be result from an underground pipe with fuel in it leaking and causing some pollution to the aquifer underneath. I think we've adequately demonstrated and described the controls and safety mechanisms that'll be in place with this system versus whatever you might have in an above ground system. But most importantly, they're designing them this way because that's how people install them. They're installed underground everywhere. They're not installed. There hasn't been the engineering developed and put to the test on above ground as there is in underground. Any limited spilling that could occur, there would be notification through the monitoring system, immediate control. There's a sump tank as described, and the amount of the amount of leakage is minor. We don't believe that because you can't see it, it won't alter the character. That's the same criteria as number one. But we think it is in keeping and preserving the spirit of the ordinance of not allowing contamination to your aquifer protection. Realizing that the aquifer protection is not as sensitive maybe as it was before, in that there's the public water supply out there now due to other third-party pollutions. In any event, it won't threaten the public health, safety, or welfare, as I've already described. Number three is that substantial justice will be served if you grant the variance. The gas station is already permitted, but it's necessary to have a permit if we want to install this new technology, proven above the exemplary standard technology, and to be hidden from public view. So we think substantial justice is done to the public and to the applicant by not having it above ground and granting this variance. There'll be no harm to the public if you grant it based upon the representations and the technology as presented this evening. Number four, the values of the neighborhood and surrounding properties will not be adversely affected if you grant the variance. In this instance, as I said, the most important criteria is you wouldn't even notice it because it's an underground pipe. You've already approved a gas station. The gas station is going to be there. You're not going to see it. You'll see the tank. There'll be no pipes visible. People driving by aren't going to have concerns about what is that pipe. What if someone hits it, a car or a truck coming through? It's all underground if you grant the variance. That's what affects the values of the neighborhood, is what's visible. You won't see this. I also took the opportunity to ask the same appraiser who had delivered an opinion that allowing a gas station by special exception would not adversely affect values, to ask him to consider this particular application, and he did, and I'll submit the letter as evidence, but I want to read it. It was addressed to me, dated August 12th. In response to your recent request, I am pleased to submit my analysis of a variance request to allow subsurface transmission of gasoline through a pipeline from above-ground storage to the above-ground pumps in the Aquifer Protection District. This analysis is made to determine what effect this variance would have on surrounding properties. He then goes on to say he inspected the site, he photographed it, he attached photographs of the, he describes the abutting properties of, there's high voltage transmission across the eastern tip of the property. There's an auto service business abutting on the south at the road entrance, a Catholic school on lot 100 and behind lot 9. There's conservation land on the lot 13, which is north of the site and directly abuts it. And then across the road is Litchfield Sand and Gravel with a circa 1879 house currently vacant. This is a busy street with commercial uses in the area. The subject's gas station would be on the north end of the lot near the conservation land. As I understand it, the pipes will not be visible. The pipes would be doubled. There would be 2 means of leak detection. There are no wells in the vicinity. This is a tried and true solution, not an experiment. None of the abutters will be impacted by granting the variance. I opine that the proposed variance will not materially alter the character of the neighborhood and will not adversely impact values of nearby properties. Signed by Chet Rogers, J. Chet Rogers, LLC, Commercial Real Estate Appraiser, Hollis, New Hampshire. And as I say, there are several pictures taken, and I'm going to submit these with this application.
Thank you.
Thank you. The final criteria that we have to meet is known as the hardship criteria. And the hardship criteria has essentially 3 elements. The first is that you have to establish that the property is unique. And I would submit that this board already found that the property was unique in granting prior variances on this property at the July 10th meeting. It's unique for a lot of different reasons. I'll refresh the board's memory in that the uniqueness that was found had to do with the size of the lot, the amount of wetlands surrounding it, the adjacent proximity to the conservation land. And those were the key elements of the property that made it unique. So we think it's a unique property, and we have to determine, you have to determine that there is no fair or substantial relationship because of the uniqueness of the property between the enforcement of this ordinance provision as to this property, that is prohibiting underground pipes, and the purpose of protection of the aquifer district. And I would argue that there is no fair and substantial relationship there because we're providing all of these protections. Essentially, if you enforce the ordinance prohibiting this underground pipe, you are not really accomplishing anything extra in the goal of protecting the aquifer district. If you put them above ground, our argument is they won't even be as safe as if they were below ground. So enforcing it as to this particular property and this particular application for the limited underground piping as presented, there is no fair and substantial relationship. And the final point is you have to determine if this proposal is reasonable given those factors. And we would argue that since there's a gas station permitted, for all the reasons I've enunciated, it's preferable to have this type of system underground. It's in your hands to demand the highest level of underground piping. Otherwise, in a normal situation, a gas station may not necessarily employ this type of piping. But here you have an opportunity to require that as a condition of the variance. So you're going to get a stepped up installation program from anything that exists out there today. So we think it's a reasonable use given those criteria. Happy to answer any questions.
Quickly, you've described a little bit for us the trade-offs between above ground and below ground piping. Can you also just kind of outline how the layout, the property layout, and specifically the location of the above ground tanks and their distance to the pumps? I mean, you've laid this out such that you've kind of minimized the amount of piping required while still maintaining safety and all the other things that you're concerned about when building a gas station. We haven't talked about that. If you can just kind of briefly explain it to us. In other words, you didn't put these tanks, I hope, further away than necessary, and you probably couldn't put them any closer than whatever minimum safety requirements are. Can you just give us a little bit of information around that?
Sure.
I don't know what the distance is.
Go right ahead.
Right. So the key with the tanks was to provide them in a spot where they're out of the normal traffic pattern. So we have them on the eastern boundary, the northern boundary. Yep. Right on the edge of the access that would go around the building for the diesel pumps. And I believe there would also be a drive-through, right? For potential.
That hasn't been approved yet.
Okay. But yes, there's a driveway that goes around the building. So just to the right of that spot, that provides great access for delivery. It provides enough buffering for the actual users to basically not encounter the tanks. The only time that someone would be there would be just a short moment to drive past it. But again, they're bunkered and they're protected, and so that puts us as close as we can to the dispensing location, but far enough away to kind of keep it out of the normal traffic patterns.
And we had submitted a plan for the other application, which I'll submit here as well, showing the approximate location of the proposed tanks as well as the pumps, so you get a sense of the traffic flow. Obviously, the planning board would have to approve. If you approve, they have to approve everything.
Yeah.
So the location may change, screening, the protection devices may change, but we think this is the superior layout. And so we're proposing is this. And if there's a substantial change that we think would adversely affect how you viewed the site, we would have to come back here.
Now, I know I pulled into a gas station and the tanker truck is there refilling the tanks, underground tanks.
Correct.
They usually just tap into something that's basically right there at the surface, flush with the asphalt. Are they tapping into these tanks now above ground? Is that how they're filling those up?
That's
And
right.
they have containment basin? Are they in it? I mean, what are the, I guess the same risk associated with spills there as
Right.
there are anywhere else then, right?
That's correct. Yep. But the nice thing is the reason why you don't hear of those conditions is because the truck drivers are trained, and then there's this cam lock system that that in order for it to work, it has to connect, and then the system, the trucking system, actually verifies that there's the lock
A seal.
seal, and then it will begin pumping. So you don't have that condition where someone just wasn't paying attention, quickly jammed it on, and then turned the pump on, and it's spewing everywhere. So it will be similar, except that instead of mounting that to where they unscrew the cap that you see, they're usually like orange and black and that sort of thing, and you'll see them on the surface where there's kind of an extra concrete area, or maybe slightly raised. That's to afford the extra strength of the concrete above the tanks. They'll unscrew those caps, and then in that little well will be the port where they fill, and then that's where that cam lock goes on. Ours will be above ground, so that piping will essentially kind of like when a fire truck shows up to the port on the side of a building. It'll be like that, and they'll be able to lock it in and then clamp it down and begin to fill.
Gotcha. Have you spoken to the Conservation Committee about this specific piece of the project?
We presented it at the time that we presented everything. We said we'll have to go underground and discuss what we'd have to do.
Yeah.
So, and we didn't,
Did they say anything? I mean, because I don't know the exact timeline here, but I understand that the ordinances were modified at one point for the Northern Commercial District to make gas stations a special exception and allowed use under by special exception. It seems as though, and the Aquifer Protection District is overlaid on top of the Northern Commercial District. So it almost seems as though they just failed. Did they talk at all about whether they need to update this particular piece of the ordinance for the?
there was no discussion with the Conservation Commission
No,
about that,
it
other
seems like
than
they updated one piece, but didn't update the other piece.
they made it possible, and yet on the other hand, impossible still. So we went in with the above ground tank to say we have a gas station. If we can get a special exception, we'll keep the tanks out of the ground. And they favored that. We discussed that it would have to be a connecting pipe, but we just never applied for the variance until after the fact.
Right. Well, I don't have anything in writing from the Conservation Committee on this particular request, but I think we already have the record and their position from the past case in July where we approved, as you said, the actual gas station itself. Now we have to deal with the pipe. Any other questions?
Or, how do, and now this system, is this commonly used now with newer gas stations?
Yeah, the gas station owners who want to spend the money to give them the assurances at night that their gas station is completely compliant and not leaking are investing in this technology. It benefits for them both from a constructability because it allows it to occur faster.
Yeah.
You don't need the complexity of that labor force to put all those nuts and bolts together.
Right.
So it allows for it to be constructed smoothly, more efficiently, and so it's worth the value for that return on investment essentially.
It seems like it. So again, just because I asked you this earlier, it appears to me that what we're hearing is that the owner or the builder, or the applicant, has chosen to use a system, made their own choice to use a system that is of a higher standard than it is actually required for a gas station to use. They can get away with a different system if they want to. They're not required to use this. They've just chosen to go with a higher standard.
Sure.
And
The
for
Lexus
me,
versus the Camry.
That's
Yes.
important because we're dealing not only with the Northern Commercial District, but we're dealing with the Aquifer Protection District, which is why I think this is a good move, a good thing.
And that was our commitment to the Conservation Commission as well.
I was just wondering if like the Irving station up the street has this there system.
Any other questions before I open it up to public input? So what we'd like to do now is open it up to public input. If there's anybody who wishes to speak either in favor of the request to allow this underground piping for the use of, for transferring gasoline from above ground tanks to the pumps. You can speak now. We would just ask that you give us your name and address. If there's nothing from the public, what we'll do is we close public input on this case and then we'll deliberate here in public. And we'll entertain a motion. So do I have a motion to close public input?
I'll make that motion. We close public input.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion to close public input and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. I mean, I'll go first. I think a big part of this for me is the fact that we've gone through all the criteria to approve the gas station. There was this one element that we knew was coming, which is the pipeline. I think we should go through each of the criteria. But I'm leaning towards approving it for the reasons that I approved it before. But let's go through the criteria quickly on this. Contrary to the public input, I don't know, public interest. I don't know if anybody has any issues, if you feel as though, how you feel about this, or the applicant met the standard.
So the public interest, as it was described, I believe, is more in the concept of protecting the aquifer, not so much whether there's any visual issues with
Right.
the pipeline being above ground or below ground. It's the aquifer protection that's the public interest, as far as this case is concerned.
I would agree.
And after hearing the testimony, understanding the technology, it is my opinion that the public interest is to bury these lines underground using this high technology versus something that could be easily run into. There's many things that can go wrong with pipelines above ground than underground. I think in this case, the public interest is to, with this technology, to keep those pipelines underground.
I would agree.
I would agree with that too.
Yeah.
I agree.
I think that it goes along with number 2, right?
Yeah, it's the same exact
Yeah.
argument, I
Spirit.
believe.
Yeah.
The spirit and intent of the ordinance is to protect the aquifer.
And I think this,
Number 3, substantial justice. I think what they've outlined here is spot on, really.
Mm.
It's an approved use at this point, and they need the pipelines
Yes,
in order to be able to transmit the fuel. So it certainly you'd provide justice to the applicant in that case.
right. So 1, 2, 3, and 4 almost are all the same answer.
The surrounding properties.
yeah, I don't think.
Yeah,
that'd be-
and
I mean, it's underground, so how can?
So
it-
there's no
I
effect.
mean, the gas station's there, so this doesn't really.
There's no effect of the
Profit.
surrounding properties.
Yeah.
So the only one that probably need to kind of discuss further is the special condition. And I think from our discussions before, the unique part of this property is what we had discussed with allowing the gas station in the first place.
Yeah,
I think our ruling on that,
on the hardship test.
on the hardship
Yeah.
from the last one is what applies here. I think, that's my opinion.
no, I would agree. Yeah, I don't think there's anything different there. There's a pipeline underneath. It doesn't get seen or anything.
Right.
And we know that the arguments, like you said, we had in the previous discussion.
I think the
apply.
last statement that they're right, the relationship to the purpose of this particular provision in this instance, there's no fair and substantial relationship, given the nature of the pipeline and the adequate safety measures taken to address the purpose. I would agree with that for sure, based on what we've heard on the
Mhm.
the technology being used. And
Yeah, it was.
the above ground tanks, I know that's not what we're here to talk about the pipes, but it's just been a consistent theme here that they've taken extra steps to address concerns related to the aquifer district. And, you know, like he's saying, it cannot reasonably be accomplished in any other way. This seems to be the best way to do it.
So I would be happy to make a motion to support to approve the variance with the stipulation that the technology that was presented for the triple or double protected
The OPW system
system is going
As
to be
presented.
leveraged as presented.
is presented would be used.
That's my motion.
So I have a motion to approve the request for a variance from Article 1250, Section 1254.00B of the zoning ordinance to permit subsurface transmission of gasoline through pipeline from above-ground storage tanks to above-ground pumps in the Aquifer Protector District with the stipulation that they will use or must use the OPW system as presented
At the hearing tonight.
to this board.
Yeah.
That's the motion.
Yeah,
Do I
I
have a
second. I'll second that.
Seconded from Greg. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, let's, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So the motion carries 4-0.
Thank
on
you.
that piece.
Commend you on your presentation. It was very, very good, high tech.
Imagine me trying to say that.
Yeah. I love it. I love it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Don't forget to take your parts. Those look expensive, that connect, that couple.
Yeah.
That costs a lot of money.
Yeah.
Yeah, that, yeah. Oh, did he do good on
What
mine?
is that?
He put it right, aimed it right at my mouth.
Pointing at your face is good.
I have a thought on the notifications. If I sent all the letters to the butters on the 11th, I don't have to resend those. I just got to republish the HLN notice, right? Oh my God, you're killing me here. Such a stickler. All right. I have two more items on the agenda for this evening. One is case number 2019-06. The applicant is Eversource Energy. And the other is 2019-07. The applicant is Continental Paving, Inc. Who's here for Continental Paving? Who's here for, everybody else is here for the Eversource? 6 of us.
Ooh,
Me on Continental Paving. Is that Mr. Charbonneau? Would you mind if I have 06 on the agenda first? You okay with letting us do that one right now, right? Okay, just wanted to make sure. I didn't know if you had representation here that's, oh, you do? Oh. Okay. We'll do Eversource first. Yes, they are. That's what I'm trying to get at. I thought you were the only one here that was for 07, but you have representation here with you, right? Okay. And Continental Paving is,
no,
wait, what am I thinking of?
Eversource.
Eversource is everybody else. Who's presenting for Eversource?
Myself.
Okay, and the rest of you are butters?
Support.
No, I have some information.
Oh.
Mr. Chairman.
Oh, my.
Just to tell you who's sitting in the audience.
Okay. All right. Well, then, why don't I call the case up first? 2019-06, Eversource Energy is the name of the applicant. The owner, as well, is Eversource Energy. Location of the property is 12 Midway Avenue, Litchfield, New Hampshire. Map 15, lot 25. The applicant seeks special exception from section 1208.00 to allow for installation of motor-operated switches, related equipment, and infrastructure updates, including a permanent gravel access drive. The project will impact approximately 2,517 square foot of permanent wetlands, square foot temporary wetland impacts and 27,073 square foot wetland conservation district buffer impacts. So hopefully you'll be able to show us all of that. That sounds like a lot of impact.
Yeah, we'll be able to clarify.
All right. So we'll be following the same procedure. We'd like you to make a presentation. We'll ask any questions at some point. When we think we've heard everything, we'll open it up to public input. Then we'll close public input and we'll deliberate. And hopefully have a decision for you. So with that being said, do I have handouts from you for my board?
You just gave us-
Probably. I have maps. Who wants a map? You get a
I
map?
prefer an 11 by 17. I have those two, so whatever you're most comfortable with.
I don't know. I have a copy for the file, but that's all I care about.
As much fun as the plans are.
Oh, that's-
Is it- Thanks. Okay, so that's really the only other handout. That's the only additional copies I had for the board were the maps. So I've given out that. Everything else I have here are the originals. And I did recently receive, I don't know if you're gonna bring this up, but apparently there was something put in our mailbox from the planning board on this. So I don't know if you're gonna present the copy, but I have a copy.
You guys will have the only copy.
Okay.
It should be just a letter.
I'll have to read this or at least summarize it for the record at some point during your presentation, I guess. Go ahead.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and fellow board members. My name is Elizabeth LaRocca, and I'm the Community Relations Representative for the town of Litchfield. And so before we get started, we have Nick here to give our presentation to you. I would just like to introduce a few things for you, just to make it hopefully a little clearer, including who's with Nick and me in the back of the room. What we call this internal to the company, the W157 tap transmission project. And if you can bear with me, in a couple slides later, we'll explain where transmission fits into our world. But prior to that, I'd like to introduce Sam Harris. He's our transmission project manager for this project. I think Sam is waving or standing up.
Yep.
Great. And then we've got, and we have Kurt Nelson as well. And Kurt is our senior licensing and permitting specialist. In addition to them, we have Sarah Hoodlet, and she is our project outreach person. And myself, Nick, and in addition to Nick from TF Moran, we have Jeremy Belanger, who's the senior project manager, engineer for TF Moran. And so what we would like to do, just to make it easy for everyone to understand where this project fits in our world of the electric utility industry, is we have the generation component. If you look at this chart on page 2, at the top left-hand corner of this diagram, we have the generation of power. And the way we get that to the end consumer is, and over great distances, is through the transmission system. And that's where our project tonight fits. And that's analogous to the interstate highway system. It's our highway system. They go long distances. And then once we reach the customer load, where we need to serve the end customer, whether it's houses or commercial entities or industrial customers, we reduce the voltage at our substations, and then we transmit the electricity at a lower voltage along the poles and wires on the street, and that's known as the distribution system. And then the last thing we do is serve the end consumer. So tonight we're talking about a transmission project. If you look at the last page, page 3, our goal here with this project is to improve the transmission system reliability by adding automation, essentially automation equipment, that will allow our transmission system operators that have been working the system for 40 years to operate it in Manchester, will allow them to do things automatically from their consoles as opposed to waiting for us to dispatch linemen to go out and do things manually. So that's really all I wanted to say. I hope that is helpful. But at this point, I would like to turn it over to Nick to walk you through the submittals that you already have. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, thank you for the read. It's important to know kind of where this is fitting the overall hierarchy of use. This is a transmission-related project, so it serves not only your community, but the surrounding communities. So there's a duality in the benefit. If I can, again, Nick Golan, a licensed engineer and senior project manager with TF Moran. Just to get everyone cited, this is located at 370 Charles Bancroft Highway, tax map 15, lot 25. It's on a portion of the Passaconaway Golf Course running adjacent to, again, the Charles Bancroft Highway. The handout that you have, I think, is a great one from the standpoint. It gives you an overview of where this really is located. You've got the H123 line and the W157 line basically coming to an intersection. I'll just point this out on our impact plan, and you've got a great map in your hands that really shows this is where that circle is. That's where the primary work is being done, directly adjacent to Charles Bancroft Highway. Now, in order to accommodate this project, there are some impacts that you noted in the opening. We have some permanent wetland impacts, we have some temporary wetland impacts, and then we have what seems like this very large buffer impact. And a lot of that's attributed to the fact that we're on a golf course, and the vast majority of the land is wetlands. So the vast majority of the work ends up being within the buffer of those wetlands. Within the body of our application, and I'll make sure I read that into the record as we get through it, the reality is the wetlands that are being impacted and the buffers associated with them are areas that were previously impacted. They're within the vegetative maintenance zone that is the existing Eversource utility right-of-way and are also subject to the maintenance of the golf course. So these are areas that are actively mowed or otherwise. And when we look at that larger buffer impact number, the reality is the vast majority is that temporary. These are areas that are being regraded or otherwise to accommodate our use, or are merely just being impacted by wetland mats, which will temporarily be placed on the wetlands and the buffers to provide access to the poles. So of that value that you have before you, actually only 2,800 square feet of that is permanent, and that's associated with the access drive.
Can you highlight that?
Certainly can.
I'm not sure I'm following the key on here, but
Yep. So what we did is we updated our graphic to represent these areas of green shading. Those are the areas of buffer impact.
permanent or temporary?
It actually shows both. The only area permanent is actually within the site driveway, which is located right here. So if I can show, I'll just point it out on your plan, and if anyone else is interested.
Right into it.
Yeah, so right, this portion right here. All this other impact, that's for temporary matting, or access, or otherwise. These are the areas that will be allowed to regrow to a more natural vegetative state. So although you see a number that looks astronomical, the reality is it's actually a very small impact and will be dissipated by the use of these wetland mats.
The use of what?
Wetland mat. So it's the equivalent of almost like a timber mat.
Yeah, I see.
With the intent that so that we can drive heavier equipment across it, displaces the load instead of a point load where you could impact that wetland. It's spread out over a much larger area, such that there would be no impact.
So when we talk about temporary impact, then by definition, you're saying when all is said and done within a certain amount of time, those areas should go back to the state they were in before you
That's correct.
got in there and mucked around.
Without the mucked around part, yes. That is correct. So at least it gives you a little bit of an order of magnitude. And again, I realize that it looks like this great big number, but the reality is actually it's very small in comparison. And the purpose of those permanent buffer impacts, it's for an access drive such that one, we can install the equipment that's required that you noted in the opening, and then to maintain it so that we have access as necessary. So what I'd like to do is just lay out for you a little bit. All right, well, what's taken place prior to us meeting with you this evening? There is a host of permits that were required in order to site this infrastructure improvement, one of which is the FAA. due to the height of the poles, which vary between 47 and a half and 61 and some odd feet. We have to file with the FAA due to the location of the project, essentially right between Manchester Airport, Nashua Airport, kind of coincides with both of their radiuses. We have filed for,
How many
and
poles you putting in?
there's a total of 7.
7 new poles.
Actually, the vast majority of these are replacement of existing poles.
Okay.
So the FAA permits that are required have already been approved. As part of the siting of this driveway, being that this is the Charles Bancroft Highway, New Hampshire 3A, it does require a DOT permit for a driveway. So a driveway permit has been applied for and has been approved. And I think it's important to point out some of the characteristics of that driveway permit because it very much predicates where that driveway was situated. We have the adjacent Hillcrest Road. We need to be a minimum of 200.
Can you just go up
Oh,
to
yeah.
the point as
Why
you're
don't you
doing
all
this?
work from here? You guys,
Yeah.
you know, as long as everybody can hear me.
Thanks.
So Hillcrest Road, located right here, New Hampshire 3A, that being Charles Bancroft Highway, running north to south. You can see where our proposed driveway entrance is located here. So this is strategically located such that it's a minimum of 250 linear feet from Hillcrest Road, DOT driveway requirement. And also with its placement here, it provides 400 feet of all clear sight distance in both directions, another requirement of the DOT driveway permit. So we actually had the opportunity to meet Jim Willis out in the field, scouted it out, and the location of the driveway was very much selected with DOT's assistance. Say this is what you need in order to accommodate this driveway. Now the reality is it's a very minimal use. You know, we're going to use it when we build it, and then on the off chance of maintenance, they'll have the opportunity to pull off of the main throughway here to park to be able to maintenance and move equipment should it be required. So when we talk about our buffer impacts, our wetland impacts, they're predicated off the need of locating the driveway as it's shown.
Will it be gated or?
It will not. It's not proposed to be gated.
Okay.
So you show a spot in the northwest,
Yep.
excuse me, corner.
So this is the existing H123 corridor. This is the northwest quadrant. The existing utility pole that's located here in order to accommodate line sag or otherwise is also being replaced. And it's being replaced essentially in the same position. You'll see that we have a little bit of temporary wetland impact, and then also there's the buffer impact.
Are there lines that go back and forth through there?
Yeah, there are. So there's an existing transmission line that runs through here.
Oh, okay.
As well as across here.
Okay.
So that picture that's on the handout that Elizabeth was kind enough to provide, gives a nice little sense because you can see where areas have been cleared in order to maintain that transmission line.
So what you didn't talk about is the reason for the project. You said that you will provide some automation, but you didn't go into any concept of what kind of services or automations will be provided. What is the underlying goal of this project for your company and for the consumer?
Sure. Do you want to follow up? Or do you want me to? Let me give you an answer, and Elizabeth will supplement as necessary. This is reliability driven. So part of what Eversource does is they evaluate their existing electrical infrastructure and look for weak points. Where are areas in which improvement are needed? What we have here is essentially 3 lines that are intersecting that are all hard tapped. Such that if there's ever a problem with any one of those lines, the only way they can fix that is to actually issue a crew to come out and work on those lines, do switching or otherwise, such that power can be transmitted across the transmission lines. Sam Harris is going to expand for us. But what this allows them to do is do this actually back from the call center. Instead of having to dispatch a crew, it provides them the opportunity to much quicker to actually do a switching of those transmission lines. And I'm going to let Sam expand a little bit on it. But the reality is by automating it, the power staying on, it's reducing the opportunity for brownouts or outages. It's getting the power back on faster.
And again, Sam Harris, I'm the project manager for Eversource for the project. As Nick explained, what we have out there currently is a terminal junction of 2 lines. So H123 runs on a north-south, and W157 taps into that on an east-west plane. The way the lines are connected right now are hard taps. So we call them jumpers that go between the lines, and really it creates a single circuit between each of the 2 lines. What we're looking to do here is to sectionalize that with switches. Currently at this point, if we needed to sectionalize that, we would have to dispatch a line crew to go and drop those hard taps or jumpers to isolate a section of that line. Part of this project will install 3 switches, one on the north and south side of the H123, one on the W157 line. Each of those will have automated capabilities, which will tie into control boxes and battery panels that we have on a pole-mounted platform that, again, ties through our SCADA system, which is our fiber network, back to the control center. So it's hardwired back to the control center, and our operators can manually control that. Typically, when we see faults on the line, we'll have to go out and patrol the lines. But part of what we're doing here is giving us the ability to identify where the faults are and also address the issues timely so that we can restore power quickly.
So an improvement for Litchfield as well as the surrounding communities, which is always a positive. So we were speaking a little bit to the permits. We talked about the DOT permit, which has been approved, which very much predicated the siting of the driveway. And also we need to keep the poles within the existing right of way. So that's another site constraint that we have, is that the poles need to be sited within that existing area. As part of the wetlands dredge and fill permit, we are required to file with the New Hampshire Division of Historical Resources. We have made a filing with them and received a confirmation that no historical significant items will be impacted by our project, so we were able to check that box. Also, because of our filing with Wetlands Bureau, we are required to coordinate with New Hampshire Fish and Game, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, as well as the New Hampshire Natural Heritage Bureau. Now, we did have 2 hits for potential rare and endangered species. So what we do is we send out our environmental scientists. He evaluates the given area for those potential species, confirms there's either not suitable habitat, or if there is, would our project have an impact? And then we reach out to the applicable parties with Fish and Game and Natural Heritage Bureau. So we had a hit for unpretentious yellow-seated false pimperel. That's really requires a pond shoreland type habitat, which we don't have out there. It's really just high grass. So that can't exist in that type of environment. And then also New England cottontail. And again, it just didn't provide the right opportunity. We're right along a roadway for those species. We did receive back correspondence from both of those groups that they agreed with our observations that there would be no impacts to those species. You have copies of that correspondence in case you would like it for your file.
You have copies or I have copies?
I do.
Oh, I
If you
would love it
like
for the
them,
file,
I'd be
please.
happy
Yeah.
to provide them.
Yeah.
So I'll give you a nice big stack of things at the end here. That's a copy of every permit that we've received for this project. So that way you have it. Also, New Hampshire DES Wetlands Bureau. We did propose some permanent as well as temporary wetland impacts. The application was submitted for that. They had a couple additional questions for us, which we answered. And that permit has also been approved.
So when you say some, you mean the exact plan that we're looking at now?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes. Relative to the jurisdictional process, because it was a minor impact, it also requires concurrence from the Army Corps of Engineers, and we've also received their permit. So I'll give you a nice little stack here, but it includes permits from the FAA, DOT, DHR concurrence, as well as Fish and Game, Natural Heritage Bureau, NHDS Wetlands Bureau, as well as the Army Corps of Engineers.
That could be a first. I'm not sure we've
So-
ever gotten the permits before we've actually
So
heard a
we were
case.
very diligent in our efforts, and the reality is with these types of projects, they're very much schedule driven. There's outages scheduled months in advance such that we can best accommodate the end users. So getting all these permits in a timely fashion is our responsibility as the consultant for Eversource. So we take it very seriously to make sure these permits are acquired promptly. So I'll provide these to you for your file. So you guys know that I'm being honest. We do have our permits. That's the gist of the application. This is a public infrastructure improvement for both your community and the adjacent areas. When we think about the criteria that's required for the special exception application, it very much dovetails on the permits that I just handed you. There are certain requirements that you must meet in order to obtain a wetlands permit from the Wetlands Bureau, as well as the Army Corps of Engineers, and other siting requirements that are a necessity relative to Fish and Game, Division of Historical Resources, DOT, etc. So if I may, I was going to skip to reading the application into the record, if that would be the pleasure of the board.
Yep.
All right.
Please do.
Relative to the description of our proposed use. The scope of this project is to design a means of sectionalizing the W157 tap via remotely controlled line disconnect switches. This project will improve operations reliability by creating the ability to isolate any one of the 115 kV lines at this 3-line terminal. The proposed scope of work will include installing 3 115 kV motor operated disconnect switches, associated control cabinet, remote terminal unit, mounting platform including access and station service, which will be pole mounted approximately 5 feet from ground to the middle of the tallest equipment on a nearby transmission structure. Additional upgrades to the existing utility infrastructure controls will be made to facilitate the reliability improvements, and a permanent gravel access drive with paved apron is proposed to provide access for future inspection and maintenance of the electrical infrastructure. The project will impact the following: 2,517 square feet permanent wetlands, 9,154 square feet temporary wetlands, 27,073 square feet of wetlands conservation district buffers. Design and construction methods will be used to minimize detrimental impact upon the wetland, and the site will be restored as nearly as possible to its original condition. No reasonable alternative which does not cross a wetland or a wetland buffer, nor has less detrimental impact on the wetland, is feasible. Relative to the facts that support this request, I believe we have 8 items that are required to be addressed. The proposed use, construction, and or alteration shall be constructed in such a way that does not unduly restrict the flow of water. Best managed practices, or BMPs, are proposed for the pole installation in accordance with the Best Management Practices Manual for utility maintenance in and adjacent to wetlands and water bodies in New Hampshire. And swamp mats will be utilized to access utility poles located within the wetlands. The proposed construction will not significantly modify drainage flow paths, will not unduly restrict the flow of water. Design and construction methods will be utilized to minimize detrimental impact upon the wetland, and the site again would be restored as nearly as possible to its original condition. Proposed use is not in conflict with any and all of the purposes and intentions listed in section 1200.01 of this ordinance. Granting of this special exception is not in conflict with the proposed intent of the indicated ordinance section, as it will allow Eversource to provide reliable electrical service to the immediate and surrounding areas, a necessary public service. The project is a benefit to the health, safety, and well-being of the general public, as it will allow continued reliable service to the area, and the line will be built to National Electric Safety Code standards, or NESC. The impacted wetlands subject to this application are located in areas of previous disturbance on the Passaconaway Golf Course, bordered by the Charles Bancroft Highway, New Hampshire 3A. The use or activity proposed and its attendant impacts cannot reasonably be avoided. The wetland impacts associated with this proposed electrical infrastructure improvement project are required in the locations presented, as they are predicated on the location of the existing utility poles and overhead lines. These lines and poles are located within existing easements situated on permanent easements which Eversource owns, and which easements permit the easement holder to construct, install, operate, and maintain electric power lines on the land covered by those easements. In order to achieve appropriate access to the existing and proposed utility poles, a site access drive has been located in accordance with NHDOT driveway requirements to provide suitable site distance for safe vehicular travel and entering and exiting movements from the driveway. Due to the existing steep topography and the siting requirements associated with the NHDOT driveway application, permanent wetland impacts for a portion of the driveway, as well as ancillary grading, cannot be avoided. It became shown that the least damaging route and methodology have been selected, and that which is being proposed is the best practical alternative. And this ties a lot into our wetlands permit. We have to meet this criteria in order for that to be approved. Existing easements and access points have been utilized to limit impacts to previously disturbed wetlands or avoid wetland impacts. The use of overhead distribution lines supported by utility poles provides substantially less impact to areas of wetland jurisdiction than the alternative of direct burial construction or ground-mounted equipment. The location of the proposed utility poles and their associated guy wires was selected to provide the least impactful layout. replacing the line in its current location and utilizing the existing utility poles to the greatest extent possible is the least impactful option for the project. Access routes for replacement of utility poles have been selected so as to minimize wetland crossings. Construction activities will be scheduled to occur during the drier months or frozen conditions to minimize potential impacts. And our intention would be to start this work in basically September. So we'd be in a drier condition. And we had provided a wetland impact plan for the limits of the work. Item 5, it can be shown that reasonable and acceptable impact mitigation measures have been incorporated where necessary and appropriate to minimize wetland loss or degradation. Best management practices, BMPs, are proposed for the pole installation in accordance with the Best Management Practices Manual for utility maintenance in and adjacent to wetlands and water bodies in New Hampshire. And swamp mats will be utilized to access utility poles located within the wetlands. Sediment and erosion controls are proposed at the perimeter of the work to trap construction-related sediment and prevent downstream discharge. Design and construction methods will be used to minimize detrimental impact upon the wetland, and the site will be restored as nearly as possible to its original condition. No significant impact on the aquatic habitat of rare or endangered species as listed by the state of New Hampshire or federal government will result. The potential for impacts to rare and endangered species is being coordinated with the New Hampshire Natural Heritage Bureau, NHB, and New Hampshire Fish and Game. TFM's environmental scientists, Chris Danforth, CWS, CPESC, and CPSWQ, he's got lots of titles, reviewed the project site for 2 species listed on the NHB data check, that being the unpretentious yellow-seeded false pimperel and New England cottontail, and did not find suitable habitat within the limits of the proposed work, that being the Passaconaway Golf Course bordered by the Charles Bancroft Highway. I can provide the update via the correspondence that's been provided this evening that we do have concurrence from those appropriate bureaus that there would be no impacts to those rare or endangered species. It can be shown that adequate erosion and sediment control methods appropriate to the use are incorporated as detailed by the current recognized BMPs, e.g. Stormwater Management and Erosion and Sediment Control Handbook for Urban and Developing Areas in New Hampshire, Rockingham County Conservation District, NHDS, and Soil Conservation Service, August 1192, as amended. Sediment erosion controls as proposed are proposed at the perimeter of the work to trap construction-related sediment and prevent downstream discharge, and swamp mats are proposed to limit ground disturbance in areas of temporary impact. Again, another item that would be reviewed as part of the Wetlands Bureau's application. It can be shown that the state wetlands permit, as required, has been obtained. As stated in our application, an application for a minor impact wetland permit with NHDS Wetlands Bureau is pending. That has since been approved since our application, which is included in the packet that I gave to the chairman. So,
Before we go any further, let me just ask you, because the board didn't have a chance to read the other copies that you gave me on the permits,
yes, sir.
but just a quick glance, seems to be one conflicting on the cottontail.
How's that?
Kim, we visited the site last week and found that there have been substantial shrub growth under the power line since photovoltaic. New England cottontails are still known to inhabit the area, and it is the active nesting season. It is important that any removal of shrub is minimized to the extent possible, and access for the work avoids driving through shrub areas to reduce the risk of take.
Correct. So our plan does reflect that.
Yeah. So
So I guess I should clarify, is there the potential for the species to be there? Yes, but we've taken the appropriate mitigation steps as required. By the
so it's not
appropriate
that you didn't find suitable habitat. There is suitable habitat for the cottontail.
And that would appear to be
And
the
I
case
just saying
within
that-
the body of the golf course. And that we needed to implement those provisions.
Okay.
That is correct, sir.
And you guys, in the letter, just so everybody knows, it says that you guys are going to follow their advice and minimize shrub removal as suggested.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I have a letter here from the planning board, which I would like to read. This is dated August 6, 2019. It was sent to myself as chairman of the Zoning Board of Adjustment regarding Eversource Energy Project Tax Map 15, Lot 25. Dear Chairman Riley, at its scheduled meeting of Tuesday, August 6, 2019, the Litchfield Planning Board heard from Eversource Energy I'm going to skip over some of this. In a public information session related to its application of tax map 15 lot 25, to install the disconnect switches, control cabinet, et cetera, that you've already described here. This project requires a special exception under section 1208. Eversource has already been before the Town Conservation Commission, which has provided a letter of support to the ZBA with respect to this project. Before we go any further, I don't have a letter from ZBA. Do you have a letter from the ZBA?
Conservation Commission?
I
They
mean,
said they'd be,
from the Conservation
they
Commission.
said they were gonna provide it to you guys directly.
Yeah, okay.
Didn't get there?
No. Not in my file anyways. I mean, not that I'm aware of. Anyways, the planning board's letter goes on. According to the notes section of the plan provided by Eversource at the planning board meeting, August 6th, it appears the purpose of the plan is to show the proposed wetland impact areas and mat access route in the existing right-of-way. They go on to describe what those impacts are, 2,500 square foot, et cetera. This project does have a regional impact. It would allow for the replacement of transmission switches to be done more efficiently, better distribute voltage to a wider customer base, and prevent outages from occurring in the first place. According to Eversource, they have projects like these all over the state. All work is to be done in the existing right-of-way. Eversource has applied for and been granted the following permits, which you've already listed.
Yes, sir.
All the butters have been notified, and there have been few concerns. This is, again, according to the planning board in their letter. They go on, the Litchfield Planning Board therefore has voted unanimously to send this letter of support to the Litchfield Zoning Board, recommending the ZBA grant Eversource Energy the special exception requested under section 1208 of the Litchfield zoning ordinance, et cetera, respectfully. Chairman of the Litchfield Planning Board. So we do have that letter from the planning board. As I said, I don't have anything from the Conservation Committee in writing, so. But did you meet with the Conservation Committee, and in your words, how did that meeting go?
I know it went very well. It was a great opportunity for us as a project team to kind of spread the message of the good that Eversource is doing with these types of projects. We gave a very similar presentation as to the opening, explaining who's involved with the project, what the immediate and regional benefits were, and also explain the nature of the impacts and why those impacts were required, both because of the location of the right-of-way and the poles, as well as the siting of the driveway per NHDOT requirements.
Did anybody from the Conservation Committee do site walks with you guys by any
We
chance?
did not.
No. Planning board either?
No.
Didn't need to.
No,
At least they didn't feel they needed
I
to.
think most people seemed to drive by this area and had a pretty good feel.
Yeah, I guess it is
what it was like.
viewable right from here, isn't it?
Can't miss it. Yeah.
But again, in terms of that meeting with the Conservation Committee, they didn't express any stipulations, concerns?
They
Did they
voted as
express
a group
support?
to support the application,
Okay,
and said they would write a letter as such.
very good. Thanks. I just wanted to get that into the record.
Yes, sir.
Anybody have any questions? No? No. All right, then I would like to, at this point, open this meeting to, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to open it to public input. So at this point, if there's any members out there in the public who would like to speak in favor or against the application, address, please. Just need your address. Okay. Would you mind coming to a microphone?
Pull the spot right here.
The only thing, in 30 years, we've never seen a rabbit out there, that the golf course has been there, so I don't think they exist there. And
That's great.
Eversource has done everything on the golf course that they've disturbed. They have put it back the way it was before, so they've done everything that they said they were going to do. That's it.
Thanks, sir.
So you don't have any concerns?
No.
I say that was support.
That sounds like
That sounds like
support.
support to me. Take where we can get it.
Thank you. Is there any other members of the public that would like to speak on this matter? All right,
You never come.
hearing none. I guess, I'll take a motion to close public input this time.
I'll make a motion to close public input.
I have a motion to close public input, seconded
Second.
by
John.
John. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, what do we have?
You have enough
Anybody got
information?
any comments?
You have enough? You have all their input?
I think it's an excellent write-up. I
Yeah.
mean, I read through it as he was basically
Okay, so you have that information.
reading.
So we don't have to go and fill this
Wow.
out. You've got enough information.
I believe there is, but I think we do need to deliberate though. We have to go through the steps and at least briefly speak why we're in favor or against. So you guys can humor me on that point. Would you mind guiding us through that
Sure.
discussion?
So we have 8 criteria that they need to meet in order to be granted the special exception. The first one was the proposed use, construction, and/or alteration shall be constructed in such a way that does not unduly restrict the flow of water. Any comments for that?
No, it's,
No, I mean, I think the map that they've shown and the facts that they provided around the right of way and the constraints associated with, the DOT requirements for the access driveway and so forth. It seems that that they've basically gonna do this without any real major impact to flow of water.
Right, I just want to reiterate the DES wetland permit that they received as well. So that
That's
goes
true.
towards that too. B, the proposed use is not in conflict with any and all purposes and intentions listed in LZO section 1200.01 of this ordinance because I think you went through that and spoke of the benefits for the project and the best approach possible to minimize the impacts to the wetlands.
I agree.
the ordinances.
I think even some of what the planning board had said, how it has a regional impact and so forth, may also come into play.
C, the use of activity proposed and its intended impacts cannot reasonably be avoided because, and I think major fact to that is the existence already of the wires, poles, and infrastructure that is already there.
Yeah, the easement already exists for access.
And the location of the driveway for New Hampshire DOT.
Right.
D, it can be shown that the least damaging route and methodology have been selected and that which is being proposed is the best practical alternative available because, I think that ties into what we just said for C.
Yeah,
I agree.
I would agree with that.
E, it can be shown that reasonable and acceptable impact mitigation measures have been incorporated where necessary and appropriate to minimize wetland loss and degradation because,
Well, they're taking steps with the, doing it during the drier time of year and using those mats.
Mhm.
Protect the
Yeah, agreed.
wetland.
F, significant impact on the aquatic habitat of rare or endangered species as listed by the New Hampshire State and New Hampshire federal government will not result because they agreed to abide by recommendations that they received regarding the cottontail.
Yep.
G, it can be shown that adequate erosion and sedimentation control methods appropriate to the use are incorporated as detailed by the current recognized BMP because
Well, again, they're using those temporary sediment control barriers while they're working there, and they're using those mats, and they seem to be following all the
Yeah,
and
the plan as described was
Yeah.
following the
Yeah.
piece, yeah.
yeah. It's
in the state wetland permits as required have been obtained.
Correct. Yeah, exactly. Which they have. Copies are in the file now. So essentially, we're agreeing that they meet all the criteria, the 8 criteria.
Yeah.
Based on what they've submitted and our assessment. So based on that, I would entertain a motion to approve.
I would like to make a motion to, in case number 2019-06, to approve, to grant the request for a special exception from 1208.00 to allow for the installation of motor-operated switches, related equipment, and infrastructure updates, including a permanent gravel access drive as presented.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Oh, good. Another.
Well, yeah, he's getting it in there, I know. All right, so we have a second from Mark. All those, any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0 this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Good presentation. Appreciate it.
Okay. Next on the agenda, we have case number 2019-07. Name of the applicant is Continental Paving, Inc. Also the owner of the property. Location of the property is 517 and 519 Charles Bancroft Highway, Litchfield, New Hampshire, map 22, lot 8. The applicant seeks a special exception from section 1208 for proposed parking improvements. The project will impact approximately 1,375 square feet of wetland buffer. So, if you would, just
Good evening.
introduce yourself if you would, and
You bet, Mr. Chairman. My name is, hello.
Hey.
My name is Jim Petropoulos. I'm a civil engineer with Hayner Swanson, Inc., doing business at 3 Congress Street in Nashua, New Hampshire, tonight representing Continental Paving, and of course, you know Rick, who's here with us this evening. As just read into the record, we are seeking a special exception for a wetland buffer impact on property located in northwest Litchfield. I'm going to try to describe the project for you, and then I'll go back and go through the 8 criteria for the special exception. The subject site has addresses of 517 and 519 Charles Bancroft Highway. Actually, it's directly, I believe, right across the street from the gas station proposal, I think was your first case this evening.
that's what I thought.
Yep. It's a lot that measures 11.7 acres. It's property that Continental Paving purchased several years ago. We are located in both the Northern Commercial and Northern Commercial/Industrial Service Zoning District. Our direct abutters are Continental Paving to the east, commercial properties to the south, Charles Bancroft Highway to the west, and then I believe the power company, New England Power, to the north. A little bit about the property, Mr. Chairman. We do have an application pending before the planning board to subdivide this property into 2 lots. I mean, there are 2 existing buildings upon this lot. On the north part of the lot is a small single-family residence that Rick is going through and ultimately going to make a decision about what to do with that particular house. We have Leech Brook, which is a perennial stream that flows in a southwesterly direction, ultimately into the Merrimack River. South of Leech Brook is a building that's been there for a number of years. It may have been hidden in the woods. It's a 3,600 square foot equipment repair building. And that's how it's been used historically. And actually, it fit in perfect with the Continental Paving program because they have been using it for the past 3 or 4 years for their equipment repair. Again, as I mentioned, wetlands have been mapped and platted. Leech Brook carries with it a 50-foot no disturb buffer. Our planning board application also includes a site plan for the building on the south side of Leech Brook. essentially, Mr. Chairman, what Rick really wants to do is just pave the area. It's a gravel drive, it's gravel parking, and he'd like to just enhance the aesthetics of the
We're
property.
talking about the shaded area.
Yes, sir. And so we're going to have a new driveway. Currently, the driveway is located over here. We're going to have a new driveway into the site. We're going to have front parking and vehicle parking in the front of the existing building. We're going to have equipment storage in the back. The building is such you can drive in and drive out of the facility. You'll notice
Is that driveway right now where the old house is located?
now the old house is here. And the old driveway, and the old driveway is right. The gravel driveway to the commercial building is located just south of the brook. Yep. And I've given you a handout with a little bit of blow up of the site plan.
So the property right next to that, then they have some commercial vehicles parked out there too, don't they?
I bought that from Craig Young. So he was in the trucking business. There was basically, when I bought it 3 years ago, and I gave him a year to clean it up, and it took them 2.5 years, and they just finished cleaning it up.
That's the one that has power lines running right through it, right? Some of the trucks were parked underneath the power line, tractors and stuff for a while. Yeah.
Yeah, you notice most everything's gone. He still has one excavator out there. He's waiting to get somebody to clean it out. That's good. That's gonna do it. But yeah, it's always been used for this, and we just want to clean it up.
The parking area will contain about 20 new spaces. Proposing new landscaping in and around the facility. Stormwater for the new pavement will be directed into a surface stormwater basin, which we're hiding behind a grove of trees here that currently exist. That stormwater really will promote recharge, provide qualitative and quantitative treatment for the pavement. And we're providing an outlet to it, a 12-inch outlet. We like outlets to our stormwater system so that in that big storm event, it's not topping over, cresting, and causing any erosion to the tops of those banks. So that outlet is really kind of the reason we're here tonight, because the outlet, as you can see in the larger scale handout, is piped over towards the culvert underneath Charles Bancroft Highway, and it disturbs approximately 1,375 square feet of 1,375 square feet of 50-foot wetland buffer. The majority, if you look at the photo I took that I also handed out, the majority of that buffer is almost as previously worked. It's an open area. That pipe will run approximately from that pylon that's in the photo over towards the culvert towards Charles Bancroft Highway.
And that's the current road right there with that.
And that's the current driveway, correct? Yes, sir.
When you say over towards the culvert, is the culvert in the picture or out of the picture?
It's out of the picture. There's a little piece of stone, I think, head wall that you might see if I'm not mistaken in the photo.
That's it, isn't it?
Yep.
Oh, so that is it. Oh, okay. That's the start of it.
The state this
Yeah.
past year replaced that culvert under 3A. Before they did 3A,
Oh, yeah.
they replaced it.
So essentially the stormwater basin will be over here and that pipe will run right like here, outlet about 30 feet away from the stream, and provide a riprap apron and direct water into this culvert underneath the Charles Bancroft Highway. And that's really the project, Mr. Chairman. If you don't have any other questions.
The paving, this shaded area, that's not anything to do with the wetlands. It's just.
No, sir.
Yeah, it's
No.
just that green.
The only reason we're here is because of that
little green area
1,375
that's
square
right
feet.
on here.
Site plan will put us before the Litchfield Planning Board, I think, next week.
Mhm.
On June 6th, we did appear before the Litchfield Conservation Commission, both Rick and I, and received a favorable vote of support for the project. There are options to convey out. We could have gone directly into Leech Brook here through a wooded area, and we thought this was the path of least impact, and I think the Conservation Commission agreed with us.
Basically, what we're doing here is this retention area, also removing this driveway, and this eventually will be a road. I have under agreement all of Warren's property. So that the junkyard's going away and Warren's is going away. So at some point, this road will continue and come around to Albuquerque. So in this design, this retention area is going to take care of the drainage from the road at the same time. So not that you don't see that right now, but that's the future.
And we're going to present that Tuesday night to the planning board, kind of the bigger picture of what Rick's vision is here. You can see here, this is a 9-acre lot. We're only really working a couple acres of it. And so as this road continues to the south, as it turns to the south, there's other development potential upon this property.
I'm not sure it's really relevant, but that road where it would enter into Albuquerque would have to be in front of
It goes right.
putting the driving range for the
Yeah.
golf course and everything.
Yeah.
Kind of a tight, so you'd be coming right in through there.
Damn.
Isn't there somebody else on the corner? There's,
I don't know. I
He owns it
own
all.
from there, except for this lot right here.
yeah, there's one right on the corner, right? There's,
No. This is right here. Okay, I will own, that's the only piece I won't own is right here, all the way down to Romano's.
Oh,
And I bought the house behind Romano's, so everything from the brook on Albuquerque all the way up to here, we either own or have under agreement,
The road won't,
except for that one lot where the dumpster company's in there, the guy has some dumpsters.
I was going to say, Mr. Chairman, the road won't impact the more accurate driving range players.
I like that. That's a good way to put it.
So if I may, for the sake of time, I'd like to address the 8 criteria under section 1208. We have submitted the written text in our application. I'm gonna just paraphrase this. I think it's a fairly straightforward application. First point, the proposed use, construction, or alteration shall be constructed in a way that does not unduly restrict the flow of water. Leech Brook is not being touched. Our intrusion into the buffer stops about 30 feet short of Leech Brook, so Leech Brook will not be restricted. Item number 2, it can be shown that the proposed use is not in conflict with any of the purposes and intentions of Section 1200, which is your wetland ordinance, which seeks to protect and preserve the resources of Litchfield. We've tried to locate the conveyance from the stormwater basin into Leech Brook in its least impactful manner, which was closer to Charles Bancroft Highway and not through the woods. Item number 3, the use or activity cannot be reasonably avoided. Again, we as designers, we like having outlets to stormwater systems just for those larger storm events, just so they don't crest and cause unnecessary erosion to the water bank. So we believe it cannot be reasonably avoided. Number 4, the least damaging route and methodology has been selected, which is the best practical alternative. Again, minimal tree clearing for this intrusion into the buffer, 1,375 square feet. When you divide it by 50 feet, is only about a 28-foot corridor for a 15-inch pipe. And of course, the pipe with the head wall outlet and the riprap, we think is less intrusive than a swale or overland flow. Number 5, reasonable mitigation measures have been incorporated where necessary to minimize wetland loss. Again, we've been very responsible with our stormwater and our best management practices for controlling stormwater. I would like the board to note that there are no wetland impacts as a result. It's just purely buffer impacts. Number 6, no significant impact on aquatic or rare endangered species. We filed the NHB correspondence, and of course, in Northwest Litchfield, there's a number of hits, but none of those hits are anywhere near this site. So there were none touching the site. Our wetland consultant thought it was very clean with the brook and the edges of the brook, which really kind of bisect this property. There's no other associated wetlands. Of course, we're in a part of Litchfield that's pronounced sands and gravels in that part of town. Number 7, adequate erosion control measures are incorporated. While you don't see it in your particular zoning application, our planning board application does contain a number of stormwater and erosion control treatment practices, silt fences, BMPs, just to kind of make sure and protect that resource on the center of our property. So they're included in part of our site plan set, Mr. Chairman. And point eight, state wetland permits are obtained. State of New Hampshire does not have buffers, as you know. And since we're not impacting wetlands, there are no wetland permits required by New Hampshire DES for our particular application. Again, we appeared before the Concom. You may not have a copy of it. I don't think I have a copy here. I think I have one in my email, but certainly somebody in Town Hall, Joan, I could make sure that a copy of those minutes from the June 6th Conservation Commission gets sent your way for the record, in which they supported the project. So with that, either Rick or I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have about our request this evening.
Can you just clarify for me on item number 6 with the rare endangered species? You had said you applied with, or which agency?
So really, any project in New Hampshire, the resource, the statewide resource is the Natural Heritage Inventory Bureau, or NHB as it's commonly called. And they will look up in their database to determine if there's been any witnessed or recorded events or any rare or endangered species. And what they do is they don't actually zero in on an 11-acre site. They might give you the northwest quadrant of Litchfield. And so it's quite common to see a New England cottontail rabbit or something be on the list, but it was not ever witnessed here upon this particular piece of property. It was somewhere else. So our testimony, Mr. Chairman, is that there are no rare endangered species impacted as a result of our buffer impact request.
Okay, not sure I got that captured correctly. Let's follow up on that one. Any other questions from the board? Nothing on this? All right, at this time, I'll open it up to the public. What's left of it. Anybody want to speak in favor or against? You want to speak in favor of your own project? We've already heard.
Eversource guy here to cover him.
Yeah. All right, with no public to provide input, I guess we can
Make a motion to close.
make a motion to close public input. We have seconded from John. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion for public input is closed. Where's the board sit on this one?
I'm ready to vote, but you want to go through the things?
I think we need to go through.
I do too.
So
Yeah.
I will start.
Can you please?
I will.
Just like you did on the last one.
Yeah. 8 criteria. The first one, the proposed use, construction, and/or alteration shall be constructed in such a way that does not unduly restrict the flow of water. And I think he stated that the intrusion is only into the buffer. Leech Brook is not being touched at all.
Right.
So this-
So the plan itself is purposely ensuring that does not unduly restrict the flow of water.
Okay, number 2.
The proposed use is not in conflict with any and all of the purposes and intentions listed in LZO section 1200.01 of this ordinance because they chose the least impactful method to accomplish their goals, and they have a location to provide for their stormwater management that is closest to Charles Bancroft Highway.
Yeah, No, I don't know if there's any reason to tie this into future plans or potential future.
No, we don't.
That being extended, that basin serving another purpose. I don't know.
No, I mean, it
You know,
absolutely serves the current purpose.
yeah, that's all we really
Yeah,
need to focus in on for now, I guess. That's
Right.
true.
C, the use of activity proposed and its attendant impacts cannot reasonably be avoided because
Stormwater management, so they wrote, stormwater management area needs an outlet for extremely large storm events. Leech Brook is the ideal and only location for such an outlet because of its close proximity to the stormwater basin.
Yeah, they're trying to avoid overflow, and then we just run across the ground. You know, so they put this pipe in there.
What was the alternative route that he was referring to? It went through
We
the
just-
woods.
I think it was natural overflow into their
Yeah.
stream.
It's just to let the water run its
This was-
course.
Yeah, this was to
So this is actually better
then
than,
control it and direct it into the
Exactly.
stream rather than just causing erosion across the ground.
Yep.
Surface.
So how do we word this then?
so it's almost opposite. It's like use activity proposed and its attendant impacts. Basically is already trying to reasonably avoid any impact to the area. It's just, the plan itself is to ensure that there is no undue impact to the area.
You all right with that?
Mhm.
All right. I can make that work once I write it up.
D, it can be shown that the least damaging route methodology have been selected and that which is being proposed is the best practicable alternative because
Well, I think that kind of is the same.
Same as C, yeah.
Yeah.
they also spoke about the minimum
Is the erosion and control it.
tree clearing.
Minimum
And
tree
minimize
clearing.
tree clearing, yeah, he mentioned that.
And what they're proposing is less intrusive than like a swale or something
Yeah.
bigger or different.
So basically, if they weren't diverting the water into the brook, it would require a bigger swale. Is that what you said?
That's what I understood. Something to that effect. Or a
Okay.
swale would have a bigger impact than what they're doing now. E, it can be shown that reasonable and acceptable impact mitigation measures have been incorporated where necessary and appropriate to minimize wetland loss or degradation because
No, there's not going to be any wetland loss. This is into the buffer. There's no wetland loss.
Yeah, the impact to the buffer actually is protecting the wetlands.
F, significant impact on the aquatic habitat of rare or endangered species as listed by the state of New Hampshire or federal government will not result because
There haven't been any rare or endangered species observed in this particular small area.
That's what I believe he was saying.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure I can say that the NH, I don't know. I'll check, see if we have a letter from them. I don't think we have a letter from them.
No,
Would have been in my original package. It's not in what I dropped off. But I did write down the NHB.
Gee.
Well, I would also like to say that the Conservation Committee has also reviewed this too. Go ahead. Sorry.
it can be shown that adequate erosion and sedimentation control methods appropriate to the use are incorporated.
well, they're showing there's the riprap there and I mean, there's a pipe, so that's going to prevent erosion.
He
If they
did,
just let the water run over land.
and he indicated that his planning board application contains those measures as well, and I think that would be another level of review at the planning board
Yeah,
to
exactly.
make sure that adequate erosion measures are incorporated.
And then eight,
Eight
no
is
permits are required.
not applicable.
All right. Based on that, it sounds like the applicant has met the criteria, so I gotta take a motion if I got one.
I will make a motion in case number 2019-07 to grant the applicant's request for a special exception from section 1208 for proposed parking improvements, which will impact approximately 1375 square feet of wetland buffer as presented.
Second.
I have a motion by Laura, seconded by John. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. Okay. Let's see if I got anything new. I apologize for the phone, but my father's in the ER right now.
No need to apologize.
How about a motion to,
I make a motion to
I don't
adjourn.
have any other items that really need to be addressed tonight, so.
I make a motion to adjourn.
I have a motion to adjourn by
I'll
John,
second.
seconded by Greg. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thanks for coming out. Thanks for coming out tonight. Appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody.